CreepyCorner stories.
Hey everyone, welcome back to CreepyCorner stories. You know, diving into the dark web is always risky, but sharing these stories with you makes it worth it. I'm curious, where are you watching this from right now? Let me know in the comments below. I've noticed that these kinds of stories hit differently depending on where you are. It might even make the experience a little creepier. So, tell me, are you watching from the safety of your home or somewhere less secure? I found a dark web forum that tracks people who have encountered aliens. My IP address was already listed. Alright, so I wasn't gonna post this. I told myself it was stupid, just paranoia. But the more I think about it, the more I feel like I need to say something. Maybe someone out there knows what I'm talking about. Maybe someone else has seen it. This all started a few weeks ago. I was staying up late, just scrolling mindlessly on my phone. You know how it is. Reddit, Twitter, TikTok, back to Reddit. Just killing time. Around 2 a.m., I got bored and remembered an old buddy of mine who used to mess around on the dark web back in college. He always had these crazy stories about weird sites, live streams, conspiracy forums, all that crap. I'm not really into that kind of stuff, but curiosity got the best of me. I still had an old Tor browser installed from years ago, so I fired it up and started clicking through random directories. Most of it was just scams, sketchy marketplaces, or dead links. But then I found something that stuck out. It was a forum. Plain black background, white text, nothing fancy. The title at the top just said, "They are watching us." At first, I thought it was some conspiracy theory rabbit hole. You know, the usual stuff. Government cover-ups, reptilian overlords, people who think the moon landing was faked. But this was different. The posts were detailed, too detailed. One of the top threads caught my eye. The title was, "If you're reading this, you've already been seen." Okay, creepy, but I clicked on it. The post was long, like way longer than it needed to be. The guy, or whoever, was talking about these encounters people have had with them. He didn't call them aliens though. He kept saying observers. He said they don't abduct people like in the movies. They don't need to. They just watch. Sometimes for years. Sometimes for whole lifetimes. The more you notice them, the more they notice you. I was about to back out when I saw something at the bottom of the post. Check the list. See if you're on it. There was a link. Now, any sane person would have stopped right there, right? Closed the laptop, went to bed, forgot about the whole thing. But no, I clicked it. It took me to a plain HTML page, just a bunch of IP addresses and locations. At first, it looked like gibberish. Just random numbers and places all over the world. But then I saw it. My IP address, my exact location, right there, already listed. I don't know how long I sat there just staring at it. My chest felt tight, like someone had their hands around my throat. The list was huge. Thousands of people from all over the world. Some of the locations had names next to them, dates. Some of them had expiration dates. I refreshed the page. More names appeared. And one more thing changed. My expiration date was added. It was in 3 days. I didn't sleep that night. Not even for a second. I sat there, staring at my screen, refreshing the page over and over again. My IP address, my location, my expiration date. 3 days. It didn't change. It didn't disappear. It just sat there, like a death sentence typed out in plain HTML. I started spiraling. Maybe it was a prank. Maybe someone hacked my Wi-Fi. and was screwing with me. But how would they know I was on that site? How would they update my expiration date in real time? I slammed my laptop shut and tried to shake it off. I needed air. It was almost 4 a.m. when I grabbed my hoodie and left my apartment. I live in a decent part of town, not too quiet, not too sketchy. You know, the kind of neighborhood where you can walk to a 24-hour McDonald's and see at least 1 or 2 people still awake. Except tonight, the streets were empty. No cars, no late-night dog walkers, no sounds, just that kind of eerie stillness that makes your skin crawl. I was halfway down my block when I saw it. A black car, parked under a broken streetlight. No plates. Windows tinted so dark they looked like endless voids. I don't know why, but the second I saw it, my stomach dropped. It was just sitting there, perfectly still, like it had been there for hours, or like it had just arrived. I tried to play it cool. Walk past, don't look. But as soon as I stepped onto the opposite sidewalk, the engine started. A low, smooth hum. Not like a regular car starting up. More like a machine waking up. I picked up my pace. So did the car. I wasn't running, yet. But my hands were sweating. My heart was slamming against my ribs. I cut through the alley behind my building, trying to lose it. The car turned the corner. No hesitation. No screeching tires. Just smooth, controlled movement, like it was gliding after me. I sprinted. I made it to my building, fumbling for my keys like a drunk idiot. I don't even remember getting inside, just slamming the door and locking it behind me. I ran to my window, pulled the blinds apart. The car was parked right outside, still running, not moving, just watching. I stood there for what felt like forever, heart hammering, fingers gripping the window frame so tight my knuckles turned white. Then, just as the sun started to rise, the engine cut off. The door opened, and someone stepped out. I didn't see his face. He was tall, wearing a black suit, black gloves, like some men in black reject. But the way he moved, too smooth, too precise, made my skin crawl. He stood there, facing my building, and then he lifted something out of his pocket. A phone. My phone buzzed. I looked down. Unknown number. I didn't answer. I couldn't. My hands were shaking too hard. A voicemail popped up. I hesitated, then pressed play. At first, there was just silence. Static, like an old TV on a dead channel. Then, a whisper. Not a normal whisper. Multiple voices, layered. Too many voices speaking at once. And they all said the same thing. We see you. I threw my phone across the room. By the time I looked out the window again, the man was gone. The car was gone. Like they had never been there at all. I didn't leave my apartment for the next 2 days. I barely ate, barely slept. I just sat in my room, watching the street below, checking that damn website over and over again. My expiration date never changed. 2 days left. Then 1. Then it was the night before. I don't know what I expected to happen. Maybe someone breaking in. Maybe the car returning. Maybe just nothing. Maybe it really was just some sick joke. At 11:59 p.m., I was still staring at my screen. I refreshed the page. 12 a.m. The expiration date was gone. In its place, just one word. Collected. My power cut out. The entire apartment plunged into pitch black. No streetlights, no phone screen, nothing. Just darkness. Then I heard it. A scraping noise coming from my ceiling. Slow, deliberate, like nails dragging across wood. I couldn't move. I just sat there, frozen, listening. The noise shifted, moving toward the corner of my room. Then my closet door creaked open. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run, but I couldn't. I just sat there as something stepped out. It wasn't human. It wasn't anything. It was just eyes. Too many eyes, blinking in and out of the darkness, watching me. And then I woke up in my bed. It was morning. My power was back. My laptop was closed. My phone was charging next to me. Everything looked normal, but my closet door was still open, and on the floor, written in something dark, something I prayed was just ink, was a single word. Seen. I should be dead. I know that. The website said collected. My expiration date had passed. That should have been the end. But somehow, I woke up in my bed like nothing had happened, except something had happened. And I think I was only alive because they wanted me to be. The first thing I noticed was how wrong the world felt. You ever wake up and just know something's off? Like when you have a dream that felt too real, and even after you wake up, part of you is still convinced it actually happened. That's how I felt. Like reality had shifted just slightly. The air in my apartment was thick, like the walls were pressing inward. The silence was too complete. No cars outside, no birds, not even the hum of my refrigerator. I didn't even hear my own breathing at first. And then the sound started. It wasn't coming from my apartment. It was coming from inside my head. A deep, low-frequency humming, like a power line buzzing, but stretched into something organic, alive. It didn't hurt. It felt wrong, like my brain wasn't supposed to be processing it, like my ears were hearing something from a place that shouldn't exist. I clutched my head, trying to make it stop, but the more I focused on it, the louder it got. Then, under the hum, I heard something else. A voice, not like a whisper, not like a thought. It was inside me. You are awake. I felt my body seize up. My hands went numb. My tongue felt too big for my mouth. I didn't move. Do not look outside. The words didn't sound like they were coming from a person. There was something mechanical about it, like a radio transmission playing through a broken speaker. I should have listened, but I didn't. I turned my head toward the window, and that's when I saw the street. It wasn't my street. Not anymore. Everything was wrong. The buildings were the same, but they looked warped, like reflections in rippling water. The streetlights weren't glowing. They were pulsing, breathing, stretching taller, and then shrinking back down like they were alive. And the people, oh God, the people. They weren't moving right. They walked like puppets whose strings were being yanked at random. Some were too fast, flickering forward in jerky, impossible bursts of motion. Others were too slow, dragging their feet like they were stuck in thick tar. One man was standing in the middle of the road. At least, I think it was a man. His face was stretched, like someone had grabbed his skin and pulled it too tight over his skull. His mouth was wide open, but there were no teeth. Just a black void stretching down his throat. He was staring directly at me. His head started tilting. Too far. Cracking noises. I threw myself backward, away from the window. I shouldn't have looked. I shouldn't have looked. The humming in my skull got louder. My vision blurred. I felt like something was crawling behind my eyes. Then, silence. Everything stopped. The humming. The voice, the wrongness. I sat there breathing hard, my back pressed against the wall. My heart was trying to punch its way out of my chest. I needed to get out. I didn't care where. I just needed to leave my apartment. I grabbed my phone, stuffed it in my hoodie pocket, and bolted for the door. I hesitated for half a second. What if they were waiting for me on the other side? Number, I couldn't stay here. I turned the knob. The hallway was normal. Dim lighting. Old carpet. The air smelled like stale cigarettes, just like always. I started down the stairs, gripping the railing so hard my knuckles popped. The building was dead quiet. No neighbors, no TVs, nothing. When I reached the lobby, I stopped. The front door was open, just a crack, like someone had left in a hurry, or like something had come inside. I stepped forward. My breath felt too loud in my chest. I pushed the door open. The street looked normal again. No pulsing streetlights, no broken puppet people, just the city, morning traffic, a Starbucks across the street with people inside, scrolling their phones. The world was completely normal, but I knew it wasn't. Something had changed. Something had let me go. For now. I walked fast, hands stuffed in my hoodie, head down. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't stay in that building. I ended up at a McDonald's a few blocks away. It was busy, normal. The smell of grease and coffee felt too real, too grounding. I ordered a black coffee, sat in the corner, and checked my phone. No notifications, no calls, no texts. I tried to search for the forum again. The site was gone. No 404 error, no domain expired message. Just nothing, like it had never existed. I pulled up my camera app, flipping it to selfie mode. I looked like shit. Dark circles under my eyes, pale skin, hair sticking in every direction. And then I noticed something behind me. A man, sitting 3 booths away, wearing a black suit, not eating, not drinking, just watching me. I turned my head fast. My heart leapt into my throat. The booth was empty. I looked back at my phone. The camera feed was still up. He was still there, sitting perfectly still, staring, but only in the reflection. I left. I don't even remember how I got back to my apartment. I locked every door, closed every blind, sat on my bed, gripping my phone so hard my hands ached. I checked my messages one last time. A new voicemail. No missed calls, just a voicemail. I pressed play. Silence. Then breathing. Ragged. Wet. Too close. A voice. You are still seen. And then another sound. A scraping noise. Not from my phone. From my closet. I didn't move. I couldn't. The sound was still there. A slow, deliberate scraping, like nails dragging across wood, coming from inside my closet. My body felt paralyzed, every muscle locked in place. I was gripping my phone so hard my fingers hurt, but I couldn't look away from that door. It was open, just a crack. I hadn't left it like that. A thin sliver of darkness seeped through the gap, too dark for the dim glow of my nightlight to reach inside. Like the closet wasn't part of my apartment anymore. Like it was something else now. Something wrong. The air in my room felt thick, pressing against my skin like invisible hands. The silence was alive, vibrating with something I couldn't hear but could feel in my bones. Then the scraping stopped, and the breathing started. It was slow, almost rhythmic, like something was standing in the dark, waiting for me to make the mistake of looking inside. My mouth was dry. My pulse was hammering in my ears, too loud, too fast. I forced myself to swallow, forcing air into my lungs. I needed to get out, but I knew, the second I moved, whatever was inside that closet would react. I could feel it. I reached for my phone, barely breathing, keeping my eyes locked on the door. My fingers trembled as I turned on the flashlight. The second the beam cut through the darkness, the breathing stopped. My entire body tensed. My chest felt tight, like something unseen had wrapped its fingers around my ribs and was squeezing. I aimed the light at the closet. For a moment, there was nothing, just an open space. Hangers, clothes, the usual. But then, I saw it. Not a person, not a thing, a shape, a figure so black that my light didn't reach it. It was like a hole in reality itself, standing there, shifting slightly, as if it had just realized I could see it. My throat locked up. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run, but all I could do was stare at the impossible thing standing inches away, watching me without eyes. And then it moved. Fast. Too fast. A blur of darkness rushed at me, stretching, twisting, distorting reality itself. And then I was somewhere else. I woke up in the middle of the road, not outside my apartment, not anywhere I recognized, just a road, endless, stretching into the horizon. Streetlights flickered, too tall, bending at unnatural angles. There were no cars, no sounds, just a heavy fog pressing against my skin, filling my lungs. And then I saw the sign, a rusted, bent street sign, standing alone in the dirt. It had no words, just a symbol, a spiral, carved too deeply into the metal, like someone had scratched it over and over until it sank into the surface. Something about it made my stomach turn. My vision warped around it, like my eyes weren't meant to see it. Then I heard it, not breathing, not scraping, footsteps behind me. I turned around too fast, nearly losing my balance. My head spun, my heartbeat slamming against my skull. And that's when I saw them, a group of people, standing in the fog, watching me. Except they weren't people. Not really. Their faces were stretched, like wax melting under a slow flame. Their mouths hung open too wide, but no sound came out. Their hands twitched in odd, unnatural spasms, fingers curling in ways they shouldn't. But their eyes were wrong. Not white, not human, reflective, like glass, like camera lenses. They were recording me. I stepped back. My foot sank into the road like wet cement. My breathing hitched. I pulled at my leg, but the asphalt gripped me, holding me in place. The figures stepped closer. Their bodies jerked forward, movements broken and unnatural, like old footage skipping frames. One of them, a woman, or something that used to be a woman, reached toward me. Her fingers stretched longer than they should have, too many joints bending at the wrong angles. I screamed. I fought, but the road kept pulling me in. I sank up to my knees, then my waist. The fog wrapped around me, crawling up my skin, burning cold. The figures loomed over me, tilting their heads, watching, watching, watching. I felt my chest tighten. My lungs collapsed. I was sinking into something deeper than the road, something below this world. And then, a sound. Not the humming, not the scraping, a ringing. My phone. I woke up screaming. I was in my apartment, my bed, my room, but the air was wrong, and my closet door was open. I scrambled for my phone, hands shaking. A new voicemail. No missed calls, just a voicemail. I pressed play, static, then a voice, but not just one, a chorus of voices, all speaking at once, and they said one thing: "You are almost ready." The message ended. My phone screen glitched. The time read 3:33 a.m. I turned toward my closet, heart slamming against my ribs. Something was inside. I couldn't see it, but I felt it, watching, waiting. And then, in the silence, the last thing I ever wanted to hear. The closet door creaked open. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just sat there, frozen, staring at the closet door as it creaked open inch by inch. The air in my room turned thick, suffocating, like I was drowning in something invisible. And then, the whispering started, not in my head, not through my phone, from inside the closet, a chorus of layered voices speaking over each other, whispering in languages I didn't understand. Some were high-pitched, almost childlike. Others were deep, guttural, inhuman. And beneath them all, there was something else. A low, wet, clicking sound, like teeth snapping together. The darkness inside the closet shifted. It moved. Something was in there. Something big. Something that had been waiting. A hand slid out first. At least I think it was a hand. It had too many fingers, too long, too thin. The skin was pale, stretched tight over jagged bones. The nails were black and shiny, reflecting the faint glow from my phone screen. Then came the arm. It bent the wrong way, like a broken marionette. My stomach churned. My body screamed at me to run, to move, to do anything. But I couldn't. The air pressed against my skin, like something alive was crawling over me. The whispering grew louder, and then I saw its face, or what was left of it, a gaping hole where its mouth should have been, stretching too wide, too deep, disappearing into a black void that pulsed, like it was breathing. No lips, no tongue, just a dark, open wound. Its eyes, if they were even eyes, were nothing but reflective glass, like camera lenses, like they were recording me. And then it spoke, not out loud, inside my head. You were never supposed to see this. My vision blurred, my ears rang, my nose started bleeding, and I realized it wasn't speaking to me. It was inside me. My thoughts weren't mine anymore. It was pulling something out of me, shifting through my memories like a hand digging through wet meat. I felt it, saw flashes of my childhood, my mother's face, the smell of rain on pavement when I was 10. The first time I felt afraid of the dark, it was feeding on them, feeding on me. I screamed. My body jerked forward against my will. My head slammed back against the wall, and my vision split like static on a broken TV. And then, I was somewhere else. I don't know how to explain what happened next, because I don't think I was me anymore. I was in a room, a white room, too white, like the inside of a hospital, but wrong. Sterile, empty, endless. There were no walls, no doors, just a chair, and a man sitting in it. No, not a man. Something pretending to be a man. His skin was too smooth, too perfect, like a wax figure that had been sculpted just a little too well. He was wearing a black suit, but his hands weren't hands. They were blades, thin silver, glistening under the blinding light, twitching, clicking together. I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. I was trapped inside myself, locked inside some broken version of reality where nothing made sense. The man-thing smiled, not with his mouth, with his eyes. They flickered like a glitching screen. Do you understand now? I couldn't answer. You were chosen. His voice warped, shifted. It was every voice I had ever heard, every conversation I had ever had, all at once. You are part of us now. The whispering started again, louder, filling my skull. And then I realized I was never meant to leave that website. The moment I clicked the link, the moment I saw my IP address listed, it wasn't a warning. It was a claim. I had been marked, not for death, for something else, something worse, something I couldn't escape. The man-thing stood up, his limbs stretched too long, bending at impossible angles. The air around him rippled, like heat rising from pavement. I felt my skin tighten, my bones ache. Something inside me was changing. The chair in the center of the room wasn't empty anymore. I was sitting in it. I opened my mouth to scream, and then everything snapped. I woke up in my bed. My room was normal. My phone was on my nightstand. There were no missed calls, no voicemails. The closet door was closed. For For a moment, I thought it was over, that maybe it had been a dream, a hallucination, a breakdown, until I turned on my laptop. The website was back. The list was gone. There was only one message left, a new thread, a single sentence. Welcome home. I felt something shift inside me. Something wasn't right. I got up, walked to my bathroom, and turned on the light. My hands were shaking as I looked into the mirror. And then I saw it. My eyes. They weren't mine anymore. They were reflective, like camera lenses, like theirs. I am not me anymore. I am something else. And if you're reading this, they already see you too. A dark website lets you rent a stranger's life for a week. I recognized one of the listings. It was my next door neighbor. I'll start this off by saying I'm not an idiot. I know how the deep web works. I've watched enough YouTube horror stories, listened to Reddit posts on autopilot while falling asleep, and even clicked through some of those sketchy iceberg videos. But knowing about it and actually experiencing it are two different things. This all started about 3 weeks ago. I was in that weird part of the night where you're too tired to do anything productive, but not tired enough to sleep. So, like a moron, I ended up scrolling through one of those dark web mysteries threads on r/unresolved mysteries. Most of it was your usual crap. Conspiracy theories, missing person cases, encrypted messages nobody could figure out. But one comment caught my eye. It was buried under a post about a supposed human trafficking website that got taken down in 2016. Someone mentioned a newer site that had popped up on the dark web, something called Rent a Life. The way they described it was weird. It wasn't like those typical red room urban legends or hitman services. It was more subtle. Rent a Life isn't what you think. It doesn't sell people. It lets you borrow them. You pay to live as someone else for a week. Full access. Their job, their home, their social media. They disappear. You step in. When the week's over, they come back like nothing happened. No one remembers you. That was it. No follow-up. No replies. Just that eerie little summary. I won't lie. It got under my skin. The concept itself was already unsettling, but the way they worded it made it worse. They come back like nothing happened. No one remembers you. I don't know what possessed me to do it, but I saved the comment. Maybe I was planning to look into it later, or maybe I just wanted to remind myself how messed up people can be. Either way, I didn't think about it again until a few nights later, when I was in that same mindless scrolling zone at 2 a.m. And this time, I decided to dig deeper. I had never accessed the dark web before, but let's be real, it's not that hard. Anyone who tells you it's some massive hacker ordeal is exaggerating. I downloaded Tor, followed some basic safety steps I found in a guide, and within minutes, I was inside. Most of it was boring. Sketchy forums, drug markets, scam sites pretending to sell fake passports. It wasn't until I stumbled into a private forum that I found the link. It wasn't even hidden, just a plain, unassuming post with a single .onion link and the words, "Want to be someone else for a while?" At this point, I should have stopped. My gut was telling me I was already in too deep, but my curiosity had completely taken over. I clicked the link. The site loaded instantly, which was strange, considering most dark websites take forever. The homepage was minimal, just a black background with the Rent a Life logo, a simple outline of a human silhouette with a clock in the middle of its chest. Below it was a search bar. That was it. No instructions, No about page. No terms of service. Just a damn search bar. I hesitated before typing. My hands were already sweating, and the more I thought about it, the more wrong this felt. But I'd come this far, and something in me needed to know how deep this rabbit hole went. So, I typed in my city. At first, nothing happened. Then, slowly, a list started to generate. Names, ages, professions, social media handles, actual people. Some of them even had profile pictures. I scrolled, my stomach twisting tighter with every name I recognized. These weren't missing people. These weren't criminals. These were normal people. A barista from the Starbucks I went to, a cashier from Target, a local Uber driver. They all had a price tag next to their names. Some were cheap, only a few $100s. Others were thousands. There was even a filter option to sort by desirability. I had no idea what that meant, and I didn't want to find out. I was about to close the site when I saw it. The name that made my blood turn to ice. Jason Wilkes, my next-door neighbor. His profile picture was a selfie from his Instagram, one I'd seen before. Him at the beach, smiling, wearing those stupid reflective sunglasses he always wore. But it was the description that really made me want to throw up. Jason Wilkes, 27th sales manager. No family in the area. Lives alone. Socially active. Price, $1,300 per week. No family in the area. Whoever ran this site knew exactly who to target. My breathing got shallow. I clicked his profile without thinking, and that's when I saw the worst part. The availability status. Available February 12th to February 19th. I checked the date on my phone. It was February 11th. Jason was still home. I had literally seen him come back from work earlier that night. I shut my laptop so fast, it nearly broke. My heart was pounding out of my chest. What the hell had I just found? I sat there, staring at the wall, trying to convince myself it was some elaborate hoax. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. I knew because of what happened next. At exactly 3 a.m., I heard Jason's front door open, and he never shut it. Jason's front door was open, and it stayed open. I sat frozen on my bed, staring through my window at the narrow gap in his doorway, waiting, praying for some kind of movement. But there was nothing. No footsteps, no sounds of shuffling inside. Just the slow, rhythmic creaking of the door as the wind nudged it back and forth. Something was wrong. Jason was the kind of guy who triple-checked his locks. I had seen him do it 100 times before, yanking his front door twice before leaving. For him to leave it wide open at 3 in the morning, that wasn't just weird. That was impossible. I didn't want to go outside. Every nerve in my body screamed at me to stay in my room, to pretend I never saw anything. But my curiosity, that same stupid curiosity that got me onto that dark website in the first place, pushed me to my feet. I grabbed the baseball bat from under my bed. I don't even play baseball, but my dad gave it to me when I moved into this apartment, saying, "You never know when you'll need it." I guess tonight was the night. The air outside was freezing. Every step I took across the pavement felt wrong, like I was walking into some kind of trap. Jason's door was still swaying, creaking in a slow, almost breathing rhythm. I hesitated on his porch, bat clenched in my hands, before finally reaching out and pushing the door open. The inside of Jason's apartment was pitch black. The only light came from the street lamp behind me, casting long shadows across his living room floor. I called his name. No answer. I stepped inside. Jason's place was exactly how I had last seen it, through his window. TV remote on the couch, half-empty pizza box on the coffee table. Nothing was out of place. Nothing was stolen. It was just silent. I moved deeper inside, gripping the bat so hard my fingers ached. I checked the kitchen, the bathroom, his bedroom. No sign of Jason. But when I turned to leave, my foot hit something. I looked down. There was a single black duffel bag sitting near the front door. It wasn't Jason's. I knew that because it was identical to the ones I saw on that dark website. I crouched down, hesitating for only a second before unzipping it. Inside were clothes, a wallet, keys, an ID card. But it wasn't Jason's ID. It belonged to a man named Ethan Cole. Age 34. From Denver, Colorado. I flipped through the wallet. Credit cards, receipts, a gym membership for some place in Denver. What the hell was this doing in Jason's apartment? Then I heard the footsteps. Slow, deliberate, coming from the hallway. I didn't think. I just reacted. I dove behind the couch, pressing myself into the shadows, barely breathing as the footsteps grew closer. A figure stepped into the living room. I didn't see much, just the outline of a tall man in a black hoodie. He moved calmly, like he had been here before, like he wasn't worried about being caught, like he belonged here. The man walked past me and went straight to the duffel bag. He knelt, zipped it up, and then slung it over his shoulder. I stayed completely still, my body screaming at me to do something, but my brain refusing to let me move. Then he turned. Even in the dim light, I could see his face, and my stomach dropped, because it was Jason. Except, it wasn't. It was his face, his body. His stupid reflective sunglasses were even hooked onto his shirt collar, like always. But I swear to God, the thing that was wearing Jason's skin wasn't him. The way he moved was off. Too calm, too controlled. Jason was a loud, expressive guy. He always talked with his hands, always had this awkward energy to him. But this version of Jason, he didn't blink, didn't fidget, didn't even breathe. He just stood there for a second, staring into the darkness, before finally turning and walking out the front door. I didn't move until I heard his footsteps fade completely. Then I ran. Back in my apartment, I locked every door and window and sat in front of my laptop, trying to rationalize what I had just seen. There had to be an explanation. Maybe Jason was involved in something illegal. Maybe he was running from something. Maybe I was just overthinking this. Then I remembered the site. Rent a Life. I pulled it up again, hard hammering as I typed Jason's name into the search bar. His profile was gone. I refreshed the page. Nothing. It was like he had never existed, but there was something new. A different listing at the top of the page, one that hadn't been there before. A brand new profile. Ethan Cole, age 34, sales manager, no family in the area, lives alone, available February 19th to February 26th. I stared at the screen, my hands shaking so badly I could barely control the mouse. Jason didn't disappear. He was replaced. Something had taken his place, stolen his face, and now it was moving on to someone else, to some random guy in Denver who had no idea what was coming, and I was the only person in the world who knew. I didn't sleep that night. Every sound made my heart jump. Every passing shadow outside my window made my stomach twist in knots. But the worst part, the next morning, Jason was back. He was outside, watering his stupid little potted plants like nothing had happened, waving to people, laughing at something on his phone. It was like the thing from last night had never happened. But I knew it wasn't him. And when he looked up at my window, He smiled. Jason was back, but it wasn't him. I watched from my window as he stood outside, casually watering his plants like nothing had happened. He wore the same reflective sunglasses, the same slightly wrinkled button-down he always wore to work. If I hadn't seen what I saw the night before, I would have thought nothing was wrong. But I knew. And worse, he knew I knew. He lifted his head, those mirrored lenses locking onto my window, and then he smiled. Not the usual half smirk Jason always gave when he saw me. This was different, deliberate. It was a smile meant for me, a silent message. I felt sick. I yanked my curtain shut and sat down on my bed, gripping the edge so hard my nails dug into the fabric. My mind was racing. Jason had been replaced. Something had stolen his life. It had walked into his apartment in the middle of the night, taken his face, and walked out like it had been wearing his skin its whole life. And nobody noticed. Nobody except me. I needed proof. I grabbed my phone and pulled up Jason's Instagram. His last post was from 2 days ago, a mirror selfie at the gym. The comments were normal, just his friends hyping him up, a couple of fire emojis, nothing weird. Then my phone vibrated. A new notification. Jason Wilkes sent you a DM. My stomach flipped. My hands shook as I clicked on it. Jason. Morning, man. What's up? You good? I stared at the message for a long time, my pulse hammering in my ears. Jason never texted me. We weren't that close. We only ever talked in passing. Small talk, when taking out the trash. The occasional, hey man, in the hallway. Why the hell was he messaging me now? I typed out a response. Me. Yeah. All good. You? He replied instantly. Jason. Never better. Hey, you around today? We should grab a drink or something. Catch up. My skin crawled. This wasn't Jason. I knew it. And it knew I knew. I locked my phone and threw it onto my bed like it was diseased. My breathing was shallow, my chest tight. I felt trapped, hunted. I needed to get out. The Starbucks incident. I left my apartment without responding, trying to put as much distance between me and Jason's thing as possible. My first thought was to go somewhere public, somewhere with people. Starbucks. It was only a few blocks away, and I figured the noise, the normalcy, would help me clear my head. I ordered a black coffee and sat in the corner, staring blankly at the condensation forming on the cup. My mind was still running in circles. What was I supposed to do? Call the police? Tell them my neighbor had been replaced by something wearing his skin? Yeah, that would go well. I needed proof. I pulled up the dark web again. Rent-A-Life's homepage loaded instantly, that same minimalist design staring back at me. My hands felt clammy as I typed a new search. My name. For a second, nothing happened. Then, the screen refreshed. There was a listing, but it wasn't my real name. It was my online username, the one I had used to sign up for the dark web forum where I first found the link. User, Shadowpiercer age, 26 freelancer. Lives alone, no close family nearby. Price, $2,100 per week. Availability, TBA. The TBA sent a cold bolt of fear through my body. They were watching me, tracking me. I was already on their list. Someone cleared their throat. I jumped. The barista stood next to me, holding a tray of drinks. Hey, sorry to bother you, she said. The guy at the counter sent this over. Said he's an old friend of yours? My stomach dropped. She placed a caramel macchiato in front of me. Jason's favorite drink. I looked toward the counter, and there he was, sitting at a table near the entrance, watching me, smiling. Something is wrong with his face. I grabbed my coffee and stood up, moving towards the exit as casually as I could. I wasn't thinking. I just needed to leave. But as I passed by Jason's table, I got a closer look at him, and that's when I realized his face wasn't right. At first glance, it looked normal, but up close, it was off. The skin was too smooth, almost waxy. The way his lips curled at the edges looked painted on, like his mouth had been stretched into a permanent grin. But the worst part, his eyes. They weren't blinking, not in a normal way, not like he was zoning out. It was like he forgot to blink, like whatever was inside him wasn't used to having eyelids and was forcing itself to remember. I nearly dropped my coffee. Jason must have noticed my expression because his grin widened. "Good seeing you, man," he said, his voice just a little too even, too rehearsed. I turned and walked out without responding. As I pushed through the door, I glanced at the reflection in the glass. Jason was still staring, and then, as if to prove a point, he blinked. Once. Deliberate. Slow. Like a fucking lizard. It knows where I live. I didn't go home. I couldn't. I wandered the city for hours, trying to make sense of everything. I even considered checking into a motel for the night, but I couldn't shake the feeling that no matter where I went, it would find me. It was nearly midnight by the time I finally worked up the nerve to go back. The hallway was silent. Too silent. My footsteps felt too loud as I made my way to my apartment. I unlocked my door, stepped inside, and locked it behind me. I turned, and my blood froze. There was something on my kitchen counter, a caramel macchiato, sweating from the condensation, still cold, and next to it, a black duffel bag. My hands started shaking. I backed up toward the door, barely able to breathe. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. A new message. Jason Wilkes. "Hey man, good seeing you today. We should hang out more." Then another. Jason Wilkes. "Oh yeah, almost forgot." My phone vibrated one last time. It was a picture, taken from my closet, of me, standing right where I was now. The photo on my phone. It was of me, standing right where I was now, taken from inside my closet. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. My fingers locked around my phone, sweat slicking the screen as I stared at the image, my mind struggling to process what it meant. Someone was in my apartment, or something, and it had been watching me. I turned my head slowly, every nerve in my body screaming. The closet was across the room. The door cracked open just enough for darkness to pool out from the sliver of space. The air felt thicker, heavier, like the entire room was suffocating under some invisible weight. I took one step backward, then another. A floorboard creaked, but not under my foot. From inside the closet, the breath hitched in my throat. Something was in there. Something that had been close enough to take that picture. My muscles tensed. I clenched my phone so tight, I thought I might crack the screen. My heart slammed against my ribs, my body screaming, "Run, run, run." Then, my phone vibrated. "Jason Wilkes, aren't you gonna say hi?" The closet door moved. Not much. Just an inch. Just enough for the hinge to let out a soft, slow whine. And then, a hand slipped out. Not quickly. Not like in the horror movies, where some monster lunges out. This was slow, deliberate. The fingers were too long, the skin too smooth. It pressed against the doorframe gently, curling, testing, like it was savoring the moment. I ran. I didn't think. I didn't care about anything except getting the fuck out of that apartment. I sprinted for the door, yanking at the lock with shaking hands, throwing it open so hard it slammed against the wall. I didn't look back. I know what they do to the people they replace. I ran out into the hallway, nearly crashing into the opposite wall. My vision was swimming. My lungs burned. My hands were still shaking. Jason's apartment door was open, wide open, just like it had been the first night. A horrible, creeping realization crawled into my brain. They're already moving on. I wasn't safe here. I wasn't safe anywhere. I needed help. I pulled out my phone, nearly dropping it from how sweaty my hands were. I could barely think, barely function. My body was still in full panic mode, but I forced myself to do the only thing that made sense. I called the police. The phone rang once, twice. Then, the line cut out. Silence. I pulled the phone away, looking at the screen. No service. That was impossible. I lived in a city, a major city. I had never lost service in my life. Then my phone vibrated again. Another text, but not from Jason. This time, it was an unknown number. You shouldn't have looked. I nearly dropped my phone. That's when I noticed something else. The hallway was silent. Not normal silence. Not the usual stillness of an apartment building at night. This was wrong. The air felt too thick. The walls looked too dark. And then I saw the doors. Every single apartment door in the hallway was slightly open, not wide, not enough to see inside, just cracked open, exactly like Jason's had been, exactly like mine. A wave of nausea crashed over me. My brain refused to believe what my eyes were telling me. Were they all empty? Had everyone in this building already been taken? The hairs on my arms stood up. I needed to get out of here. I needed to get somewhere safe. I turned toward the stairwell and stopped. There was a figure standing at the end of the hallway, tall, unmoving, watching. Jason, or at least the thing that was pretending to be him. I couldn't see his face, but I didn't need to. I already knew what kind of smile was waiting for me under that dim hallway light. They're everywhere. I ran. I don't even remember making it down the stairs. All I remember is bursting out of the apartment building into the cold night air, my breath coming in ragged, desperate gasps. The streets were empty. No cars, no pedestrians, just the faint hum of streetlights buzzing overhead. I kept running. My body was in full survival mode, my legs moving on their own. I had no idea where I was going. I just needed distance. Then, a familiar sound, a phone vibrating. Not mine, somewhere nearby, close. I slowed, turning my head, my skin crawling. A man stood on the sidewalk, a few feet away. He was staring at me. His phone buzzed in his hand. Then, in perfect synchronization, 2 more people stepped out from a nearby alley, both holding phones, both watching me. My chest tightened. The air felt wrong again, like the world itself was pressing in on me. Then, more buzzing, dozens, all around me, windows above, doorways, parked cars, people standing in the shadows, all holding phones, all watching. I took a step back. Jason stepped forward. His sunglasses caught the light, reflecting the street lamp in a way that made his face look empty, hollow. Then, in a voice that sounded almost human, he spoke. "You shouldn't have looked." The streetlights flickered, and the last thing I saw, before the world went dark, was Jason smiling. The streetlights went out, and for a split second, the world vanished. Not like normal darkness. This wasn't the kind of night where your eyes could adjust. This was absence, a void that swallowed everything, including me. I couldn't see. I couldn't hear. I couldn't even feel the pavement beneath my feet. It was as if my body had been ripped out of reality and left to float in something worse than nothingness. Then, a sound. Not one sound, but hundreds. whispers, chattering teeth, breathing that was too wet, too wrong, and underneath it all, something, scraping, like nails on glass, like something was clawing its way through. Then the darkness breathed. I felt it, a hot, rancid gust of air against my face, thick and oily, slithering over my skin like a living thing. My stomach twisted, bile rising in my throat as the whispers became laughter. Jason's laughter. Except now, it wasn't just one voice. It was many, all laughing in perfect unison. Then, just as suddenly as it began, the light snapped back on. I woke up, somewhere I shouldn't be. I was lying on my back, cold metal beneath me. The air smelled like rubbing alcohol and something rotten. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. I turned my head. My skull throbbed. My body felt wrong, heavy, like I was waking up from surgery. I wasn't outside anymore. I was in a room. No windows, no doors. Just white walls and a single camera mounted in the corner. Its red light blinking slow, steady, watching. And then I realized I couldn't move. Straps, thick hospital-style restraints dug into my wrists, pinning me to the table. My ankles were strapped down too. A surgical tray sat nearby, neat, sterile, laid out with instruments that didn't belong outside of a morgue. Scalpels, forceps, a bone saw, and next to it, a black duffel bag, identical to the one I found in Jason's apartment, identical to the one left on my counter. I was next. There were others before me. A door hissed open. I flinched. My pulse spiked as two figures entered, both wearing hospital scrubs, both moving with that same unnatural slowness I had seen in the thing pretending to be Jason. They didn't speak. They didn't blink. They just stood there, staring. Then one of them stepped forward, pulling something from their pocket. A phone. They turned it toward me, and my soul froze. It was a video. The screen showed a man strapped to this same table. His face was contorted in terror, mouth stretched open in a scream that made no sound. The figures in scrubs surrounded him, their hands pressing into his skin, not cutting, not ripping, pulling. They were peeling him. His skin came away like a wet glove. Not blood, not muscle, just hollow space underneath, like his body was just a shell, and something else was waiting inside. The figures kept pulling, stretching, rearranging the flesh like it was clay, and when they were done, the man was gone, and in his place, a new person sat up, smiling. I recognized him. He was the Uber driver I had seen listed on Rent-A-Life, the next one in line. The camera panned down to the table. The old skin was still there, shriveled, limp, empty. They tried to make me one of them. I struggled harder than I ever have in my life. My wrists burned against the restraints, my breath coming in ragged, panicked gasps. One of the figures stepped closer, and then a voice crackled over a speaker. "Not yet." The figure froze. The speaker crackled again, distorting like an old intercom. "This one's different." The figures stepped back in unison. I was shaking so hard my teeth clattered. Then the speaker whispered one last thing. "Let him go." The restraints snapped open. I didn't think. I didn't question. I ran. I don't know if I'm still me. I don't remember how I got out. 1 second, I was in that windowless room. The next, I was waking up in my apartment. Everything was exactly the same. The caramel macchiato was still on the counter. The black duffel bag was gone. And my phone. No messages, no calls. Like nothing had ever happened. But I know it did. I know because of the mirror. I stood in front of it for a long time, studying my face, my hands, my skin. I touched my cheek. It felt real, but not mine. like it had been placed there, fitted to my body like a glove. And then I noticed something else. The reflection blinked, just a fraction of a second too late, like it had to think about it first. And behind my own eyes, for just a moment, I saw something else, looking back. Something that wasn't me. The final message. I don't leave my apartment anymore. I barely eat. I barely sleep. Because I don't know if I'm still me, or if they let me go because I'm already one of them. I checked Rent a Life again today. There was a new listing. Name, Shadow Piercer age, 26 freelancer. Lives alone. No family nearby. Available February 26th to March 4th. Today is February 25th. I don't know what happens at midnight, but I can feel something inside me, moving, shifting, getting ready, and worst of all, when I smile in the mirror, it doesn't feel like I'm the one doing it. I found a dark web page selling tickets to your own future. The time slot I bought matched the exact moment I woke up screaming last night. Alright, so I don't even know how to start this without sounding completely insane, but I swear on everything I love, this is real. And I don't just mean creepy coincidence. Real. I mean this has effed me up beyond repair. Real. I'm not the kind of person who jumps at ghost stories or buys into conspiracy theories. I'm just a regular guy, 22, work a dead-end job at a Starbucks in Chicago, spend way too much time on Reddit and Twitch, and occasionally mess around on the internet looking for weird stuff to kill time. That's how all of this started. A few nights ago, I was on Discord with my friend Mason, talking about dumb horror movies and creepy internet stories. He mentioned this deep web forum he found where people shared links to weird websites, stuff that wasn't indexed by Google, like abandoned chat rooms, strange live streams, and encrypted message boards. Now, I've been down deep web rabbit holes before. Nothing illegal, just curiosity. If you know where to look, you can find some bizarre stuff. So, out of boredom, I asked him for a link. He sent me a Tor address. When I clicked it, I expected one of those generic dark web marketplaces selling fake passports or credit card dumps. But this was different. The site was plain, just a black background with white text that said, "Welcome to future ticketing. Buy a ticket to a moment in your own future." Underneath, there was a button labeled, "Purchase your time slot." I laughed. "Bro, this is some gimmick site," I told Mason. "Probably just a dumb AI-generated response or something." But he didn't laugh back. He just went quiet for a second before saying, "Click it." So I did. The next page had a simple form. Enter your name, enter your email, select a date and time. The rules were weird. The site automatically assigned a time slot. You didn't get to choose. The button just said, "Generate your future." I hit it. A loading circle spun for a few seconds. Then my result popped up. Your future ticket is ready. Date, February 14th, 2025. Time, 3:32 a.m. Confirm. Purchase, $3.33. I squinted at the screen. $3? What's the scam here? Mason was just as confused as I was. Dude, just buy it. Worst case, they take your money and nothing happens. I shouldn't have. I really shouldn't have. But something about the site, the simplicity of it, the eerie specificity of the time, it got under my skin. So, like an idiot, I put in my card details. As soon as I confirmed the purchase, my screen glitched for a split second, like a frame of static. Then a message appeared. Thank you for purchasing your future ticket. See you at 3:32 a.m. I stared at it for a while. See you at 3:32 a.m. The hell was that supposed to mean? Mason was still on the call. Yo, did your screen just glitch? Yeah, probably just a fake loading effect. But I didn't believe that. Something about the way my screen flickered felt off. Like, for a fraction of a second, I thought I saw something else. A flash of a different web page, almost like a live stream. A dark room, a chair, something moving, but it was so fast I couldn't be sure. We joked about it for a bit and eventually called it a night. I brushed my teeth, scrolled through TikTok for an hour, and fell asleep. Then, at exactly 3:32 a.m., I woke up screaming. I don't mean a little yelp or a bad dream jolt. I mean, I woke up in a full-blown panic attack. My chest was tight. I was sweating, and my entire body felt like it had just been yanked out of something. And the worst part? I didn't remember why. All I knew was that I had seen something in my dream that felt real. I sat in bed, my heart still hammering, when I saw my phone screen light up. New email from future ticketing subject. Your future has arrived. Message. We hope you enjoyed your experience. I felt ice crawl up my spine. What the first shank? I checked my bank app. Sure enough, the $3.33 was gone. That's when I noticed something even worse. At the exact moment, I had woken up screaming. My laptop screen turned on, and sitting on my screen was a new tab I didn't open. A video. It was paused at 0000. The thumbnail was black, but in the center was white text that said, "Watch your future." My hands were shaking. I didn't want to click play. Every instinct in my body screamed, "Don't." But I had to know. I took a deep breath and pressed play. What I saw, I can't even explain it fully, but it was me. I was in my bed, right now, in real time. Same sheets, same clothes. The only difference? In the video, there was someone standing in the corner of my room. I don't think I've ever felt true fear until that moment. Not the kind of fear you get from a horror movie or when you hear a strange noise in your house at night. I mean the kind that roots itself so deep in your bones that it physically hurts. The video was buffering for a second, and I swear on my life, I almost closed my laptop. Every part of me was screaming that whatever was in that video, whatever I was about to see, was not meant to be seen. But my hand was frozen on the mouse, my breathing shallow, as I forced myself to watch. The screen flickered, and the video started. At first, it was just static, not normal TV static. Something was off about it. The black and white grains shifted and pulsed, like they were alive. Then, the screen cleared. It was my bedroom. I could see myself, asleep under my blankets, the dim blue glow of my laptop screen reflecting off the walls. The timestamp at the bottom read 3:32 a.m. I felt a sharp, cold dread settle in my stomach, because the video was live. I don't mean recorded earlier and sent to me live. I mean it was happening in real time. The way I was lying, the way the blankets were tangled around me, the exact position of my phone charging on my nightstand. It was all exactly as it was right now. But then, the thing in the corner moved. At first, it was just a shadow, a dark, shifting silhouette near my closet. But as my eyes adjusted, I saw it wasn't a shadow. It was a person. Number, not a person. A thing. It was tall, unnaturally tall, its head almost grazing my ceiling. Its limbs were too long, too thin, like it had been stretched. It was standing perfectly still, its head tilted slightly, watching me. And then, in the video, It stepped forward. I swear to God, I felt the floor vibrate beneath me. My real floor, not just in the video. I whipped around so fast, I nearly fell off my chair. My eyes darted to my closet, my heart slamming against my ribs. Empty. Nothing was there. But when I turned back to the screen, the thing was closer. It was standing at the foot of my bed now, its face still hidden in the dark. My sleeping self in the video shifted slightly, like I could feel something near me, even though I was unconscious. The thing reached out with one of its grotesquely long fingers, thin, almost skeletal, and touched my ankle. In the video, my body jerked violently. My sleeping self suddenly gasped, my hands twitching like I was having a seizure. And then, I heard a sound. A deep, wet, ragged breathing. Not from my laptop, from inside my room. I stopped breathing. My lungs refused to work. I didn't move, didn't blink, didn't do anything except listen. The sound was coming from somewhere behind me. Slow, raspy breaths, like someone with water in their lungs. I couldn't do it. I couldn't turn around. I just kept my eyes locked on the screen. In the video, the thing leaned down, closer, closer. I could finally see its face. I wish I hadn't. It had no eyes, just two gaping black holes where they should have been, leaking something thick and dark. Its mouth was stretched too wide, its lips cracked and torn, revealing a row of jagged, human-looking teeth. Except there were too many of them, layered in rows like a shark. And then, it smiled. That's when my sleeping self suddenly sat up. My real body jolted so violently that my chair tipped backward, slamming into the floor. My laptop hit the ground beside me, the screen cracking, but I didn't care. I was already scrambling backward, my body acting on pure survival instinct. Because the breathing, it was right behind me. I forced myself to turn around. Nothing. The room was empty, but I swear on my life, for a split second, just a split second, I saw movement in the corner of my eye. Like something was there. Like something had been standing over me, watching me. And now it was gone. I don't remember much after that. Just that I ran. I didn't even stop to grab my keys or my wallet. I just bolted out of my apartment in my socks and ran into the hallway. I was gasping for air, my whole body shaking, my skin icy cold, like I had just stepped out of a freezer. I didn't stop running until I reached the Starbucks where I worked, 3 blocks away. It was closed, obviously, but I just sat on the curb outside, rocking back and forth like a lunatic, trying to convince myself I wasn't losing my mind. Then my phone buzzed. New email. I didn't want to look. I knew what it was before I even unlocked my screen, but I did it anyway. From future ticketing subject, your next appointment is confirmed message. Thank you for watching. Your next future ticket has been scheduled. Date, February 15th, 2025. Time, 3:32 a.m. I dropped my phone. I wanted to scream, to cry, to rip my hair out. But all I could do was stare at the screen, my mind blank with horror. Because I didn't buy another ticket. The site did it for me. And now, in less than 24 hours, it's happening again. I don't know how long I sat on that curb, staring at my phone screen, like if I looked at it long enough, the words would change. Like maybe, just maybe, I was hallucinating, and none of this was real. But the date and time burned into my mind like a fresh wound. February 15th, 2025, 3:32 a.m. My next future ticket. I didn't buy it. I didn't authorize it. The website had done it for me. That's when I realized something even worse. Something that made my entire body go numb. This wasn't just some dark web prank. The site wasn't showing me the future. It was deciding it. I couldn't go back to my apartment. No way in hell. Whatever was in there with me last night, whatever was in that video, it wasn't human. It wasn't a bad dream. It was real. And I wasn't about to sit in my room at 3:32 a.m. and wait for it to happen again. So I did the only thing I could think of. I went to Mason's place. 1:47 p.m. Mason lived in a dingy apartment near Logan Square, the kind of place where the stairwells smelled like piss, and the walls were so thin you could hear entire conversations happening 2 floors away. I pounded on his door like a maniac, my hand shaking so hard I could barely make a fist. He answered after a few seconds, looking half asleep, a can of Red Bull in his hand. "Dude, what the fuck, gang?" He rubbed his eyes. "Did you get hit by a car or something? You look like..." I shoved my phone in his face. "Read this." He squinted at the screen, then frowned. "The future ticket thing again. Man, I told you, it's probably just some weird..." "Mason, listen to me." My voice was shaking. "Last night, at exactly 3:32 a.m., I woke up screaming. There was a fucking video on my laptop, dude. A live video. It showed me in my bed, sleeping. And there was..." I swallowed, my throat dry. "There was something in my room. It touched me. I felt it, Mason." His face paled a little. "What?" I told him everything. About the thing in the corner of my room. About the breathing. About how the video had moved in real time, like someone was watching me through a hidden camera. About how the site had bought another ticket for me. By the time I finished, Mason wasn't smiling anymore. He looked at my phone again, then exhaled sharply. "All right, let's say for a second that this isn't just sleep paralysis or some weird hacker saw ox." He hesitated. "That means it's gonna happen again tonight." I nodded. A long silence. Then he muttered, "Fuck, huh?" 8:23 p.m. Mason was a computer science major before he dropped out. He still knew a thing or two about how this kind of thing worked, so we spent the next few hours trying to figure out where the future ticketing site actually came from. We used a VPN. We ran it through multiple search engines. We even tried tracking the IP address connected to my purchase. Nothing. The site didn't exist on the normal web. It was completely untraceable, like it had been wiped clean from the internet the second I found it. And then Mason noticed something strange. "You said the video was live, right?" "Yeah." "So where's the camera?" I blinked. "What?" If the site was showing a live feed of you sleeping, then where the fuss is the camera? He leaned forward. "Dude, someone had to be filming you." My stomach dropped. I hadn't thought about that. I turned over everything in my mind, thinking of every possible way it could have happened. My laptop camera. No, I always kept it covered with a sticker. My phone. Also covered. A hidden webcam in my room. Maybe, but I had lived there for 3 years. How would it have gotten there without me noticing? And then the worst thought hit me. What if it wasn't a camera? What if it was something else? Mason must have seen the horror in my face, because he grabbed my shoulder. "Bro, chill. We'll figure this out." He pulled up his phone. "I have an idea. Let's go somewhere public, somewhere with cameras. Let's see what happens if you're not in your room at 3:32 a.m. I exhaled. "Where?" He smirked. "McDonald's." 3 a.m. We got to the 24-hour McDonald's on West Fullerton a little after 3 a.m. The place was mostly empty, just a few tired workers behind the counter and some dude passed out in a booth, his tray still full of fries. I kept checking the time. My hands were sweaty, my heart racing. 3:12 a.m., 3:21 a.m., 3:27 a.m., 5 minutes. I gripped the edge of the plastic table so hard my knuckles turned white. Mason was sitting across from me, sipping a large Coke like we weren't about to witness some supernatural fuckery. 3:31 a.m., 1 minute. "All right," Mason whispered. "It's almost time. Let's see if anything happens." My phone vibrated. New email. My throat tightened as I turned my screen toward Mason. From future ticketing subject, location, update, received. Message: "We know where you are." I felt the blood drain from my face, and then, in the reflection of the McDonald's window behind Mason, I saw it. A tall, thin figure, standing right outside. It wasn't looking inside. It was looking at me. My breath caught in my throat. I couldn't move. I couldn't even speak. My entire body locked up as the thing just stood there, inches away from the glass, its long, twisted fingers pressed against the surface. Mason must have noticed my expression because he turned around and immediately knocked over his drink. "Holy frog," he whispered. The thing didn't move. It just tilted its head. And then the lights went out. The whole fucking McDonald's went dark. The fryers, the cash registers, even the streetlights outside. Pitch black. I heard Mason whisper my name, but his voice sounded distant, like I was underwater. My vision blurred, my ears ringing. And then I felt something touch my leg. Something cold. Something with too many fingers. I couldn't scream. I couldn't breathe. And then everything went silent. I can't describe what it felt like in that exact moment. 1 second, I was in McDonald's, Mason sitting across from me, the warm, greasy air thick with the smell of fries. The next, everything was gone. No lights, no sound, not even the faint hum of electricity. Just blackness, like someone had reached into the world itself and ripped out all the light, leaving nothing but a void. And in that void, something was with me. It touched my leg. Not a brush, not a tap, a grip. Ice-cold fingers, longer than they should have been, wrapping around my calf like a spider curling around its prey. The pressure was wrong, not human. The fingers were too thin, the joints too sharp, like they had extra bones that didn't belong. I opened my mouth to scream, but my voice didn't work. I couldn't see. I couldn't move. My body wasn't mine anymore. And then, right against my ear, in a voice that wasn't a voice at all, a breath. Deep, slow, wet. I felt it, thick and cold against my skin, as if something with a mouth far too close to my face was inhaling me. Then, a whisper. Not in English, not in any language I'd ever heard before. It was low, guttural, like it was spoken through water, like a voice stretched too thin and forced through a throat that wasn't made for speaking. But I understood it. I don't know how, but I did. It said, "We are here now." And then everything ripped back. The lights slammed back on all at once. The McDonald's was suddenly filled with the sounds of buzzing machines, flickering fluorescent bulbs, and the beep, beep, beep of the cash registers resetting. I sucked in a breath so fast my chest burned. I was back in my seat. My hands were gripping the edge of the plastic table, so hard my nails had left deep, crescent-shaped marks in the surface. Mason was still across from me, his eyes wide, his mouth hanging open like he wanted to say something, but couldn't. My leg was free, but it wasn't normal anymore. I slowly, shakily pulled up the fabric of my jeans to look, and there, wrapped around my calf, burned into my skin like a fresh brand, were the marks of fingers, long blackened fingerprints, scorched into my flesh. The pain hit me a second later. A searing, deep burn that felt like the heat was still inside my leg, still sinking deeper into the muscle, still etching itself into me. I screamed. I don't remember falling out of my chair. I barely remember Mason grabbing me, shouting my name over and over as my vision went hazy from the pain. The workers were staring. The passed-out guy in the booth was suddenly awake, looking at me like I'd just sprouted a second head. I could still feel it. The fingers, still wrapped around my leg, still there, even though nothing was physically touching me anymore. Something had marked me. 4:12 a.m. Mason's car smelled like weed and old McDonald's bags, but I couldn't focus on anything except the pain. He was driving way too fast, running red lights, but I didn't care. I just wanted to be far away from whatever the fushing had just happened. "What the fudge was that?" he muttered, gripping the wheel so tight his knuckles were white. I couldn't answer. I was staring at my leg, at the blackened prints burned into my skin. They weren't normal burns. The edges were sharp, too perfect, like something had deliberately pressed its hand against me. Like a signature, a claim. I had the overwhelming, nauseating feeling that something had touched me in a way no human ever should be touched. Not physically, not even in a way that made sense. Something had reached into me, and now it wasn't letting go. Mason kept glancing at me, his breathing erratic. "Dude, say something. What the fuck happened?" I swallowed hard. My voice barely worked. It was here. It followed me. His hands tightened on the wheel. "What the fuck does that mean?" I didn't know, but I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't about the website anymore. It had started with that future ticketing page, sure, but this was something bigger, something that had been waiting for me. And now that I had seen it, now that it had touched me, it wasn't going to stop. 4:30 a.m. We got to Mason's apartment. I could barely walk. My leg felt like it was still burning. He helped me inside, locking the door behind us, double-checking the windows. "All right," he said, pacing. "All right. Okay. We just need to think. Need to figure this out. Maybe if we delete the site from your laptop, it'll stop. Maybe..." I already knew that wasn't going to work, but I nodded anyway. Mason grabbed my laptop and powered it on. The second the screen lit up, the speakers screeched. Not feedback, not a normal system error. Something else. A sound like hundreds of voices screaming all at once. I clamped my hands over my ears, but it was inside my head. The laptop screen flickered. The future ticketing page opened by itself. There was no purchase button anymore. No email prompt. Just a single line of text. "No more tickets. We are here." The screen glitched. Then the webcam turned on. My reflection popped up in the tiny preview box. Only, it wasn't just me. Something was standing behind me. Tall, dark, grinning. And then the last email came through. New email. From future ticketing subject. "Your future has arrived. Message. Thank you for your participation. It is no longer necessary to schedule future visits. You are with us now." The screen went black. The apartment lights went out. Mason screamed. And in that moment, as the darkness swallowed me whole, I knew I had never bought a ticket to the future. I had bought a ticket to the end. The lights died. Everything went black. The apartment, Mason, the whole world around me just vanished. And in that suffocating darkness, I heard them. At first, it was distant, whispering, a wet, rasping chorus of voices that didn't belong to anything human. Not in this world, not in any world. The sound slithered through the dark like oily tendrils, curling around me, inside me. And then, the breathing, deep, slow, wet. I knew what was coming before I saw it, because I could feel it. Something was behind me. I didn't move. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. My body was frozen, my muscles locked in place, like I had been buried alive in my own skin. Every inch of me was screaming to run, to break free, to do anything but stand there like a fussing idiot while it reached for me. But I didn't have a choice, because this time, it didn't just touch me. It pulled me in. I don't remember how long I was in there. There was no time in that place, no light, no air, just an endless rotting void pressing in on all sides, like the inside of a stomach that had been starved for too long. And the worst part, I wasn't alone. I could hear them all around me, thousands of voices, moaning, gurgling, choking. Some of them were screaming in languages I didn't recognize. Others were just whispering my name, over and over and over. I wasn't standing anymore. I wasn't anything. I felt stretched, my body pulling in directions that weren't physically possible, my skin peeling away in layers, but I wasn't bleeding, because I wasn't human here. I wasn't me. I was becoming something else. I tried to scream, but the moment I opened my mouth, the whispers poured inside. They crawled into me, twisting through my throat, my lungs, filling me up like a nest of roaches burrowing into an empty husk. And then, somewhere in the distance, a light. Number, not a light. A screen. Mason's apartment. 4:44 a.m. The world snapped back into existence. I was lying on Mason's floor, gasping like I had just been pulled out of deep water. My clothes were drenched, but not with sweat. Something thick, something black. I could barely breathe. And Mason was gone. The apartment was trashed, furniture overturned, glass shattered, streaks of dark liquid smeared across the floor, leading toward the door. The walls were covered in something I didn't want to identify. Long scratched-in symbols that pulsed when I looked at them, like they were alive. And on Mason's laptop screen, a video. It was paused at 0000. The thumbnail was dark, but I could make out Mason's face. His mouth was open in a scream, his eyes black, his body wronged. Something was behind him, something tall, something grinning. I reached out with a shaking hand and pressed play. The video began. At first, it was just static. Then, Mason, in this exact room, staring at his laptop, his breath coming out in short, sharp gasps. He turned, his eyes darting around like he felt something but couldn't see it. Then the whispering started, not from the video, from inside the apartment. I snapped my head up. The symbols on the walls were moving. They were shifting, twisting into new shapes, like something was crawling underneath them, like something was trying to get out. I looked back at the video. Mason was crying now. In the video, his mouth was open, but no sound came out. His body jerked like a marionette on broken strings. His fingers curled in on themselves, snapping at the joints, but he didn't react to the pain. He was staring at the screen, and then, in the reflection of his laptop screen, I saw it. The thing. The same thing that had been watching me. Standing behind Mason. I stopped breathing. In the video, Mason slowly turned around, his movements unnatural, like something was controlling his body from the inside. And the second he faced the camera, the lights cut out. A split second later, the screen went black. Then, new email. From Future Ticketing. Subject, your future has arrived. Message, we hope you enjoyed your experience. The process is now complete. Welcome to your new reality. The air in the room changed. I could feel something shifting around me, curling through the air like invisible fingers, and in the reflection of Mason's laptop screen, I saw myself, but it wasn't me. The thing standing in my place had my face, my body, but its eyes were hollow, black pits, its mouth curled into a grin, too wide, too wrong. It lifted one too long finger and pointed at me. The whispering rose. Hundreds of voices screamed in unison. And then, I don't know where I am. I don't know if this is reality anymore. Mason is gone. His apartment doesn't exist. My phone won't turn on. The only thing that still works is this laptop. And no matter how many times I try to close it, the future ticketing page keeps opening again. The screen flickers. The email notification won't go away. And when I look down at my hands, they don't look like mine anymore. The fingers are too long. The joints bend in the wrong places. I don't feel like I'm in control. I feel like I'm being watched, like something inside me is waiting. And I have the sinking, horrifying feeling that someone, somewhere, just bought a new ticket. And when their time comes, I'll be the one standing in the corner of their room. I found a dark web map of abandoned towns that still have residents. My hometown was on the list. Okay, so before I even start, I just want to say, I'm not some tech genius or deep web hacker. I'm just a regular dude, and I had no business messing around in places I didn't understand. I know that now, but back then, I was just bored. This all started about 6 months ago when I was in that late night YouTube rabbit hole phase. You know, watching videos about weird internet mysteries, backrooms type lore, conspiracy theories, all that creepy internet horror. And then I found this one video. It was super low quality, like it was recorded off a 2008 laptop webcam. The guy was talking about dead towns that are still alive, towns that were marked abandoned on maps, but supposedly still had people, not normal people. He mentioned a few places: Centralia, Pennsylvania, that coal mine fire town, Dudleytown in Connecticut, and this one place in Russia that straight up had a population of 0, but somehow still had working streetlights. And then, near the end of the video, the dude said something that made my stomach drop. He said, "There's a full list of these towns on the deep web. Some say the residents never left. Others say they never died." I should have clicked off. I should have laughed it off as BS and gone to bed. But nah, I did the dumbest thing possible. I went looking for the list. I won't go into detail about how I got there, but if you know anything about Tor browsers, you know how easy it is to find yourself in places you weren't supposed to be. I was expecting a basic forum post, or maybe a sketchy old website, but what I actually found was way worse. It was a map. Not just any map. It was an interactive one, like Google Maps, but completely stripped down. No street names, no roads, just red dots marking locations across the world. At the top of the page, in bold white text, were the words, "Abandoned towns that still have residents." My stomach tightened as I zoomed in, clicking on random dots. Some of the names were places I'd heard of, like Pripyat in Ukraine, but others, they were just towns. Tiny, nameless towns in the middle of nowhere. Each one had a small, cryptic description attached to it, like, "Locals never seen outside during the day. Visitors report hearing voices underground. Buildings appear abandoned, but lights turn on at night. Lost recorded population, 0. Unconfirmed sightings in 2021. It was unnerving. but I kept zooming in, scanning the US section of the map. The dots were scattered, mostly in places you'd expect. Backwoods Kentucky, the middle of the Nevada desert. And then I saw a dot right where my hometown should be. At first, I thought it was a mistake. My hometown isn't exactly a major city, but it's not abandoned. People live there. My family lives there. But when I clicked on the dot, a description popped up. Officially abandoned in 2012. Reported disappearances, 32. Lost visitor entry, do not enter. I felt my chest tighten. 2012. That didn't make sense. I'd lived there my whole life. I was literally in that town 2 weeks ago, visiting my parents. There were schools, restaurants, a Starbucks that just opened last year. How the hell was this place labeled as abandoned? I was about to back out when I saw something even weirder, something that made my whole body go cold. At the bottom of the screen, in a tiny box, there was a live feed. It looked like a street camera, a grainy black and white view of a road I knew way too well. Main Street. I leaned in, staring at the screen. The feed was staticky, but I could still see the streetlights glowing, the empty sidewalk. It was almost too empty, like a stage set for a town, waiting for someone to step in. And then, just as I was about to close the tab, something moved. A figure stepped into frame. It was a man. At least I think it was. He was tall, wearing a hoodie that covered most of his face. He moved weirdly, like he was glitching. 1 second, he was at the edge of the screen, and the next, he was dead center, like he'd skipped a few frames. And then, he stopped and looked directly at the camera, number directly at me. I don't know how I knew, but I felt it, like when someone's staring at you from across the room. He tilted his head, and then the feed cut out. I slammed my laptop shut so hard, I thought I cracked the screen. My heart was pounding. I sat there, trying to convince myself it was just a hoax, just some creepy deep web prank. But then my phone vibrated. A text message. No caller ID. I swallowed, my throat dry, and unlocked my phone. There were only 3 words. Do not return. That was 6 months ago. I haven't been back since. But yesterday, my mom called. She sounded off. She told me my dad had gone missing. He left for work 3 days ago, and no one's seen him since. She kept saying the same thing over and over, like she was in a trance. The lights don't turn off at night anymore. I don't know what to do. I think I have to go back. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat there in my apartment, phone in my shaking hands, reading my mom's last words over and over again. The lights don't turn off at night anymore. She didn't say goodbye. She didn't ask me to come home. She just said that, and then hung up. I called her back. No answer. I texted. Nothing. I FaceTimed her. Nothing. I sat there for maybe an hour, trying to convince myself this was just some weird electrical issue, or that my mom was just stressed because of my dad. But deep down, I knew better. I knew I had to go back. I packed a bag with essentials, clothes, a flashlight, my old baseball bat from high school, just in case. Something about this whole thing felt wrong, and I wasn't about to go back to my hometown unarmed. The drive was only a few hours, but the closer I got, the worse the air started to feel. You ever walk into a house where something terrible happened? That thick, heavy silence where everything just feels wrong. That's what the road felt like. By the time I saw the first sign for my town, I realized something was seriously wrong. There were no cars. It was late afternoon, a time when people should have been commuting, Kids should have been getting home from school, but the streets were empty. No pedestrians, no parked cars, no anything. I turned onto Main Street and immediately slammed my foot on the brakes. The entire street was lined with streetlights, not just the normal ones either. There were hundreds of them, every 10 feet, standing in perfect formation, like they'd been planted overnight. All of them were on. It was broad daylight. The sun was still shining, but these things were burning like they were trying to drown out the sky. The worst part, some of them were flickering, not in a random way either. It was rhythmic, a pattern, like Morse code, like they were trying to say something. I took a deep breath and kept driving. My parents' house was on the other side of town, past the empty strip malls, past the silent parking lots of McDonald's and Walmart. Every building looked wrong. Not abandoned, not decayed, just vacant, like someone had hit pause on the entire town. When I pulled into my parents' driveway, I noticed something else. The house was lit up. Every single light in the house was on. The porch light, the bedroom lights, even the damn garage had an eerie yellow glow coming from inside. I stepped out of the car. The second my foot hit the pavement, I heard something, a faint buzzing sound. It wasn't coming from the house. It was coming from everywhere. The sky, the air, the street. It sounded like electricity, like a low, steady hum, as if the entire town was running on some kind of invisible generator. My hands were shaking as I walked up the steps and knocked on the door. "Mom?" I called out. "Dad?" Silence. I knocked harder. Nothing. Then, from somewhere inside the house, I heard footsteps. Slow, heavy footsteps. They didn't sound like my mom's. They sure as hell didn't sound like my dad's. I reached for the doorknob, and it swung open on its own. The hallway was completely empty, but that wasn't what made my stomach drop. It was the fact that the inside of the house was even brighter than it looked from outside. I stepped in, shielding my eyes. The light bulbs were blinding. The glow from the lamps, the kitchen fixtures, even the nightlights in the hallway. It all looked wrong, artificial, too white. I kept moving. "Mom? Dad?" My voice echoed back at me. I turned the corner into the living room, and that's when I saw it. The TV was on. Not just on, it was playing security footage. And not just any footage. It was my street. It was a live feed, showing my car, parked outside the house, showing me, standing in the living room. That's when I noticed something else. There was a figure standing just outside the frame. At the edge of the TV screen, half hidden behind the doorway, was a person. A tall, unmoving silhouette, watching me. I spun around so fast I almost tripped. My eyes darted to the doorway behind me. Empty. But I swear to God, for a split second before I turned, I felt breathing on my neck. Something whispered, "The lights don't turn off anymore." My heart slammed against my ribs. I backed away toward the kitchen, reaching for my phone to call someone, anyone, when I heard something upstairs. A door creaking open. I froze. My parents' bedroom. Slowly, step by step, I made my way up the staircase. The buzzing sound was getting louder. My ears started ringing. I reached the top. The hallway light was flickering. The bedroom door was wide open. I stepped inside, and I swear to God, I almost screamed. There, standing in the center of the room, was my mom. But something was wrong. Her body was facing the window, but her head was turned toward me. Not just turned, twisted, bent at an angle that wasn't humanly possible. Her neck stretched and creaking like an old wooden beam. Her eyes were wide open, unblinking, glowing, and then she smiled. A long, slow grin that stretched too far, and in a voice that sounded like static, she whispered, "You shouldn't have come back." The lights exploded. Every bulb in the room burst at once, showering me with burning hot glass. The buzzing turned into a screech, and for a split second, I saw shadows moving on the walls. Not normal shadows. Too many arms, too many legs, crawling, writhing shapes, dozens of them, slithering across the walls like spiders. I ran. I didn't even think. I just ran. Down the stairs, through the kitchen, out the front door. But the street wasn't empty anymore. Figures stood beneath the flickering streetlights. Tall, still, unmoving. Hundreds of them, stretching down the road. Some were wearing hoods. Some were wearing clothes that looked like mine. None of them had faces. I slammed my car door shut, jammed the keys into the ignition, and peeled out of the driveway. My tires screeched against the pavement, and as I sped down the road, I saw them turn their heads in unison, watching me. And just before I cleared the last streetlight, at the edge of town, I saw my dad, standing in the middle of the road, his arms at his sides, his face twisted into the same too wide smile. And as I sped past him, I heard his voice, but it wasn't his voice. It was every voice in town, speaking at once. You can't run from the light. And then, static. The next thing I knew, I was waking up in a gas station parking lot, 2 towns over. I checked my phone. It was glitching. The last text I sent, it was to my mom. It just said, "I'm home." When I woke up in that gas station parking lot, my hands were still clenched so hard around the steering wheel that my knuckles were white. My mouth was dry. My heart was still pounding. I checked my phone. 2:42 a.m. I had no memory of driving here. The last thing I remembered was my dad standing in the road, smiling that impossible smile. I should have left it alone. I should have just driven as far away as possible, burned my phone, changed my name, anything. But instead, I did the dumbest thing imaginable. I rewatched the security footage. My hands trembled as I unlocked my phone. I went to my camera roll, expecting nothing but a black screen, some corrupted file, or an error message telling me it didn't save. It was there, a 38-second video. I hesitated, thumb hovering over the screen, every instinct in my body screaming at me to delete it. But I pressed play. The video started the moment I stepped into my parents' house. The lights were still too bright. I saw myself walking toward the TV, my movements slow, hesitant. I saw the screen flicker. I saw the figure standing just out of frame. And then I saw it. There was a single frame, barely a fraction of a second, where something else appeared. Something behind me. I dragged my finger across the screen, pausing at that exact frame. My stomach dropped. There was a face behind me. Not a person, a shape. It didn't have eyes. It didn't have a mouth. It barely even had a form. It was just a black void, the absence of light, like a person-shaped hole in reality. But the longer I stared, the more I felt like it was staring back. I almost threw my phone across the parking lot. My body went ice cold, my breath shallow. But then I made another mistake. I looked up, and I saw the streetlights. They were still on, not just in the parking lot. Everywhere. Every light, from the flickering neon gas station sign to the highway street lamps in the distance. They were all on, and I wasn't alone. A figure stood at the edge of the parking lot, unmoving, watching. My blood turned to ice. It wasn't a person. I could tell, even in the dim glow of the streetlights. It was too tall. Its limbs were too long. Its head was tilted, just slightly, as if it was trying to recognize me. I didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't blink, and then it took a step forward. I fucking floored it. I didn't stop driving until the gas tank hit empty. I must have made it at least 3 towns over before the car sputtered and died on the side of the highway. I sat there in the dark, gripping the steering wheel so hard my hands ached. The road was silent. The sky was black. For the first time in what felt like forever, there were no streetlights. But I knew I wasn't safe. Because the moment I killed the engine, my phone buzzed. No caller ID. I almost didn't pick up, but something inside me needed to hear it, needed to know if it was real. I pressed the phone to my ear. Silence. Then, click. The sound of a light switch turning on. My stomach clenched. Then I heard something else. Breathing. Not normal breathing. It was slow, hollow, wrong, like air moving through an empty space. Then, a whisper, a voice that sounded just like my dad's. You can't hide in the dark. The call ended. I threw my phone onto the passenger seat, my entire body shaking. I was done. I was so far beyond done, I couldn't even process it anymore. I just sat there, breathing hard, staring at the road ahead, until I realized something. The highway was too dark. I squinted. The further I looked, the less I could see. It was like the darkness wasn't just there. It was growing, stretching, spreading, like it was alive. I turned my key in the ignition. Nothing. The car wouldn't start. I grabbed my phone. The screen wouldn't turn on. I hit the flashlight button. Nothing. The dark was moving closer. Something was in it. A shape. A figure. I saw the faintest outline of a hand reaching for my window. And then, the second before it touched the glass, the streetlights flickered back on. I gasped, my lungs filling with air, my heart slamming against my ribs. The figure was gone. Just gone. Like it had never been there at all. But as I sat there shaking, I realized something. The streetlights weren't normal anymore. They weren't white. They were red. And somewhere in the distance, barely audible over the hum of electricity, I heard it. A slow, warbling sound, like a radio tuning between stations, like 1,000 voices whispering in unison. And beneath it all, beneath the static and the distortion, I heard my own voice, whispering my own name, and laughing. I don't remember what happened after that. When I finally came back to myself, the sun was rising, my car was running again, my phone was back on, and I had a new text. No caller ID. It was an address, a location inside my hometown, and 3 words: come home. Now. The sun was rising, but it didn't feel like morning. It felt like something pretending to be morning. The sky was pale and washed out, the air heavy and static charged, like the world was resetting itself after something went horribly wrong. I sat there in my car, staring at my phone, an address, inside my hometown. Come home. Now. Every single instinct in my body screamed at me to drive the other way, but I didn't, because I knew this wasn't going to stop. Not if I ran, not if I ignored it, not if I buried my head in the sand and pretended I hadn't seen my mother's head twisted at an impossible angle, my father standing in the road with a smile that stretched too wide, or the things crawling through the light. Whatever this was, whatever had infected my town, my home, my family, it wanted me back, and I was going to find out why. The drive felt different this time. I don't know how to explain it, but the roads felt longer. The signs looked wrong, like they were misspelled, like they were trying to rewrite themselves while I drove past them. The billboards on the side of the highway were blank. The gas stations were open, but there were no cars at the pumps, no cashiers inside. It was like the world was fading out, like I was driving back into a place that shouldn't exist anymore. By the time I passed the first "Welcome to our town" sign, my hands were shaking. Everything looked normal, but I knew better now. I knew what that meant. It was waiting for me. I followed the GPS to the address in the text. It took me to a part of town I didn't recognize. That was impossible. I grew up here. I knew every back road, every alley, every shortcut. But this place wasn't here before. It was a street I had never seen, lined with houses that looked old, not abandoned, not decayed, old, like they had been sitting here, untouched for centuries. The wood dark and warped, the windows covered in thick curtains, the kind your grandmother would use to keep something from looking in, and the streetlights. There were so many of them, glowing that same red light, burning like open wounds in the sky. I parked in front of the house at the end of the street. My hands were slick with sweat. My breathing was shallow. This was it. The address from the text. I got out of the car. The second my foot hit the pavement, the front door creaked open on its own. The house smelled wrong. Not like rot. Not like dust. It smelled like electricity. Like the air after a lightning strike. Inside, the wallpaper was peeling in long, curled strips. The wooden floor was warped and sun-bleached. And the lights. Every single light bulb was missing. The sockets were empty. Dark holes staring down from the ceiling. But somehow, the house was still glowing. A soft red hue, pulsing through the cracks in the walls, like veins beneath the skin. I stepped forward. The air buzzed. The walls hummed. Somewhere, in the distance, I heard the sound of footsteps. Slow, deliberate, heavy. I followed the sound down a long, narrow hallway. At the end was a door. It looked new, brand new, like it had just been built, like the house had grown it just for me. I placed my hand on the knob. The second I touched it, a voice whispered behind me, "He's waiting." I spun around. No one was there. The hallway was empty. I turned back to the door, and I opened it. The room was impossible. It was too big. It stretched out into darkness, the walls and floor barely visible beneath the flickering red glow. And at the center of it, a chair, a single wooden chair. And sitting in that chair was my father. He looked normal, his hands folded neatly in his lap, his head bowed slightly, like he was waiting for me to speak first. "Dad?" I whispered. He looked up, and then he smiled. I froze, because it wasn't a normal smile. It was the same one I saw on the road, too wide, too bright, too wrong, like his skin was stretched too tight over his skull. "I'm so glad you came home," he said. His voice was off, like a recording played at the wrong speed. "Dad, what's happening? Where's Mom?" His eyes flickered. Not his expression, his actual eyes. For a split second, they turned into two glowing orbs of red light. "She's upstairs," he said. I took a step forward. "Upstairs where?" Another smile. "Upstairs, in the light." I turned to run, but the walls were gone. The hallway wasn't there anymore. The house was gone, and in its place was a field of streetlights, hundreds of them, stretching into the distance, all glowing red. The ground beneath me wasn't wood anymore. It was concrete, a long, empty street, and far ahead, at the end of the road, I saw a figure, standing perfectly still beneath the last streetlight, waiting, watching, and then they all turned toward me. Every single streetlight on the road bent inward, their long poles creaking and groaning, twisting like skeletal necks. And they were looking at me. And from somewhere deep within the red glow, a voice whispered, "You don't belong in the dark. You belong with us." Then the lights went out, and everything went black. I woke up in my car. The sun was rising. I was parked in my parents' driveway. My phone buzzed. A new text. No caller ID. "Welcome home." I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I sat there in my car, gripping the steering wheel so hard my fingernails were cutting into my palms. My phone screen still glowed in the darkness, that final message staring back at me. Welcome home. My hometown sat outside my windshield, bathed in the unnatural glow of a rising sun that felt wrong. It wasn't warm. It wasn't soft. It was sterile. A light that didn't bring comfort, only exposed everything that shouldn't be seen. My childhood house stood in front of me. The front door was open. I had no memory of parking here, no memory of turning onto this street. The last thing I remembered was the streetlights bending toward me, the voice whispering from the glow. Then, nothing. And now I was here, like nothing had happened. I reached for my phone with a shaking hand and did the only thing that made sense. I tried to call 911. No service, no bars, no Wi-Fi, no data, just that small, mocking message at the top of the screen. No signal. I checked my contacts. They were gone. All of them, except for one. Mom. I didn't add this number. I knew I didn't, but it was there. And before I could stop myself, my thumb moved on its own. I pressed call. A low, distorted buzzing filled my ear, like static trying to form words. Then, after a long pause, click. I didn't speak. Neither did she. The silence stretched, thick, suffocating, and then, breathing, slow, hollow, not my mother's, not human. Then a voice, whispering, warped. The lights don't turn off anymore. I threw my phone into the passenger seat and grabbed my baseball bat. I was done running. I stepped out of the car. The air was still, heavy. Every house on the street was lit up. Every window, every porch, every garage. Blinding light spilling out from inside. But no one was outside. No movement. No sound. Like the whole town was waiting. And then, somewhere down the street, a single light bulb popped. Glass shattered onto pavement. And suddenly, all of them started going out. One by one. Population, population, population. The lights were dying. The glow retreating. And the shadows at the end of the street. They were getting closer. Long, stretching forms crawling from the dark. Moving on too many limbs. I ran. The second I crossed the threshold of my parents' house, I slammed the door behind me, locked it, bolted it. My heartbeat was hammering in my ears. The lights inside were so blinding, I had to shield my eyes. Every bulb, every fixture, burning at full power. The house hummed with electricity, vibrating under my feet. But I wasn't alone. At the top of the staircase, she was standing there, my mother. Her head was tilted slightly. Her lips were stretched into a frozen smile. And her eyes, they were nothing but light. White-hot orbs glowing from deep in her skull, like she wasn't a person anymore, like she was just a shell. And she spoke, not with her voice, with all of them. 1,000 voices whispering in perfect unison. "It's so good to see you again." I took a step back. "Where's Dad?" I managed to choke out. Her head twitched. The glow behind her eyes pulsed. Then, I heard a noise from the basement. A soft, shuffling sound, like bare feet against concrete. And then, slowly, from the darkness below, a shape crawled up the stairs. A man, or something wearing a man. My father's face. but his body was wrong. His limbs moved like a puppet on broken strings. His joints bent at impossible angles. His skin was transparent, and inside of him, I could see something else. Something twisting, something writhing, something made of pure light pulsing beneath his skin like a second body. And as he reached the top of the stairs, he grinned. His teeth were glowing. "It's time to come home, son." I swung the bat. It connected with his face, but instead of cracking bone, the bat went straight through, like hitting a projection, like he was barely real. My father didn't react. He just kept smiling. I turned to run, but my mother was gone. The whole house was gone. I was standing outside again, on Main Street, and every single light was on, and they were all watching me. Streetlights, car headlights, the neon glow from storefronts, the bulbs inside every house, every apartment, every window, all of them turned toward me, like a town made of eyeballs, and in the center of the street, beneath the tallest streetlight, a figure, not a person, not a shadow, something wearing the shape of both. And as I stared at it, my father's voice whispered beside me, "There is no dark anymore." And suddenly, I understood. The lights weren't here to keep them away. The lights were them. They were never afraid of the dark. They used the dark to make us afraid. So we would run to the light, to them. So we would willingly step into their open arms. So they could crawl inside of us, wear us like clothes, like they wore my mother, like they wore my father, like they were about to wear me. I opened my mouth to scream, and the lights swallowed me whole. I woke up in my apartment. The sun was rising. My phone was buzzing. I reached for it with a trembling hand. A new text. No caller ID. "It's so bright out today." My hand started shaking. I turned on the TV. Every channel was static. I went to my window, looked out at the city skyline, and I felt my stomach drop. The street lights, the traffic lights, the lights in every building, they were all red, and deep beneath the hum of electricity, I heard it, a voice that wasn't mine, whispering from inside me, laughing